Let's talk a little bit about this narcissistic abuse topic, because obviously that is what your website is all about. So I know you talk about things related to trauma. So what are like the various ways that narcissistic abuse specifically can be traumatic for people?
Yeah, to me, it's a very unique form of trauma because this is a person that you started off trusting and that you have a very deep bond with. This is your partner. And so you've been very vulnerable with this person. You've exposed information about yourself to this person. And that is not the kind of trauma that we see, for example, if someone's in a war or someone's been raped by a stranger or something like that. There's not a very deep connection to the person that's about to violate you. And when that happens, this kind of trauma does a real number on not only the person from a stress point of view, but also from a thinking point of view and the self-worth point of view. It actually changes our brain in ways that we'll need months or years to recover from. It's a very unique form of trauma, in my opinion.
Got it. So so this is a piece of language that I don't quite understand as far as your work goes. So you talk about neuro pathway activations. So please educate all of us who are not well versed in this world. What are neuro pathway activations?
Yeah, absolutely. So our brain has ways of communicating with different sections. And the real sort of easy way that people like myself and other neuroscientists and neuropsychologists, we will refer to like having the neural pathways. For example, for me to talk to you right now, there are many neural pathways at work. There are neural pathways within my frontal lobes that keep me focused on what you just said to me, focus on what I'm saying, gives me a target of my point. Because if that was not activated, I'd be all over the place. I talk about what I see out the window there, and then this and that, I'd be all over. That part is working. My language center is working. The part that gets words working. So many different neural pathways are working. So neural pathways refers to different brain regions and circuitry and chemistry, all at work at one time, making a certain action take place. And for example, when we are involved with a relationship, the reward system, and that's a system of a lot of different neural pathways at work that cause certain actions. So we have a part of the brain called the ventral tegmental area. We have the nucleus accumbens, and then chemistry like dopamine and norepinephrine, and they are all working at once. And guess what that does? It makes us feel attraction to somebody. It makes us feel addicted to somebody, addicted to a drug, excited about something, enjoying our food. It does so many different things. And we just use that word reward system, and a neuroscientist will know exactly what neural pathways and neurochemistry is involved and brain sections. So it's a shorthand way of saying a bunch of neural pathways at work.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for a little background on that. So given that, now that we kind of have a little background on how those pathways work, how can survivors of narcissistic abuse use this information to help them in their healing?
Yeah. The reason I try to help my survivors go towards rather neural pathways is because some of them, and I understand why, they think that our brain has a get it out system where the more you talk about your trauma, then eventually you'll get over it. But it's actually not that way, especially when people have conditions like PTSD. The more you talk about your trauma and the specific behaviors of, let's say, your narcissist or the psychopath who violated you, you actually activating the neural pathways of pain. You're just keeping yourself in that sort of box. You're not moving forward. It is cathartic because it feels good to release, but the very next day, you're in the same spot. You haven't moved in your healing. And so I try to explain to survivors that it's an activation, deactivation system, not a get it out system. And so you want to cool down those neural pathways that are dedicated to the narcissist or the psychopath, which is don't talk so much about what he did or what she did to you. So going to message boards and different groups and just using that group as a way to sort of compare what the various narcissists or psychopaths did, to each of you, and you reading the other people's stories, that's just going to keep the activations of stress going. You need to go in the other direction, which is calming down the brain. There are certain neural pathways that will do that, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience because those neural pathways that are associated with the narcissist or the psychopath after you've broken up are very strong. Like all you'll want to do is talk about that person or read about that disorder. it's going to consume you. So it will take a bit of a fight to shift yourself into the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting as I've been talking with people in this event that has kind of come up a couple of times, not specifically related to neuroscience like you're saying, but how I think, right, so many people tend to just start talking and keep talking, and years later they're still talking about, right, this incident, this abuse, which is obviously a horribly traumatic event, and yeah, not realizing, right, what you're saying, right, it can be detrimental to just keep mulling it over and over again.